We are getting to the final pieces of the speech preparation. So we're going to look at outlining the speech here. Now, if you are concerned about whether or not you must include an outline with your speech, here's the key. Outlining is a great tool to use. It's something that can really be incredibly beneficial. You have options. Now you still have to do an outline and you absolutely must submit it. But I will give you some options here a little bit later for what you can do when you actually deliver the speech. So let's look at a little bit about outlining to start with. Now, why would you ever do an outline in the first place? Now, regardless of whether you are writing a paper, doing a speech, creating a novel, whatever it is, outlining can be really helpful. It helps the speaker, or if you're writing, the writer, to see an overview of the speech at a glance. So if you've got that outline, 1, 2, 3 pages long, if you can see how much of each main point is in existence as you have had it laid out, that's really helpful. There's times when I can go and I can look through and I can say, all right, look, main point 1 is about a quarter of page 1, and main point 2 is about 3/4 of page 1. There's a discrepancy there. So I'm going to have to look at reevaluating which subpoints go with which main points, or maybe I've really honed in on a particular category, which would be that second main point, and maybe it should really be 2 main points. So it helps you to see an overview of the speech at a glance. It also helps keep the speaker on track if you use it during the speech, which I would highly recommend. I personally don't use any other tools but an outline and maybe a little bit of handwritten notes on my outline. So it helps me to know what's coming up next, where I need to focus my attention, and I don't lose my place, so it can really keep you on track. Another thing is it helps you to create structure, so you can see the overview of the structure of your speech, your introduction, the bulk of your body, and then the conclusion, and you can see how much of each section of the structure of your speech you have done. It also helps you to see that for each point, what are you using as subpoints, and are you fully developing each of those subpoints? There's a good rule of thumb. If you ever have an A, you must have a B. If you ever have a 1, you must have a 2. Now, it doesn't continue down that line. You don't have to have a 3 if you have a 2, and so on. But if you ever make a point, you need to add to that point one more time to fully support it. So it helps you to create structure. And then last but not least, because you have to, it's required. So you are going to need to submit an outline to me during your rounds of erudite speeches. You will have to have an outline in both round 1 and round 2. And so making sure that you have this structure laid out is key. Now, honestly, the outline that I'm asking of you is not overwhelming. Let me give you kind of an overview of what to put into your outline. So there's a couple of sections. One, you need to have an introduction that has these 4 things. You want to tell me, what is your attention getter? How are you relating the topic to your audience? What is your credibility statement? And what is your thesis statement? So remember, your attention getter are those things like the story or the statistic or some kind of testimony or something like that that guides us in, that leads us in. Relating to the topic lets us know why this information is important to this particular audience. What's in it for me? Why do I care about what you have to say about this information? Why does this group of college students benefit from this topic? Your credibility statement should tell me why you have the credentials to give this speech. What right do you have to give this information? Do you have experience in the topic? Have you researched it fully? Do you have excellent sources that back up what you say? And then finally, your thesis statement, which you should know by now what that is. Tell me what you're going to tell me, including those major points of your speech goal. Okay? So having all 4 of those things in your intro. You also need to have a body and a conclusion. Now, in the body, I'm going to look for your main points, and I'm going to look for the subpoints within those main points. Any research you've done or additional support material needs to be included. Now, this can be keywords. It doesn't have to be full sentences, but it does need to have all subpoints and all main points. I'm also going to look for transitions between all the major pieces, and I'll show you what I mean by that here in a second. But I do want to see those signposts. Now that we've looked at this, we're going to look at this. Now that you've seen A, we're going to move to B, and so on. So I want to see those transitions in the right spots. I also want to see every single spot that you are going to orally cite your source. So remember, oral citations are, according to John Smith, the author of How to Train Your Dragon. That's the first thing that popped into my mind. But you want to tell me in bold where you're using those sources. Now you can put them at the end of a section, at the end of a subpoint. You can put them within a subpoint. You can create a sentence and just bold the source part. How you do that is up to you, but I'm going to look for at least 5 separate sources bolded into the body of your speech, or in the intro and conclusion. They can be in there too. But you need at least 5 of those. And then you also want to have a source list, works cited, a bibliography. That is a separate page, and it should be the list of your sources in either APA or MLA format. Either one, whichever you choose, is completely fine. But it's a separate page, and it has the formatting correct for APA or MLA. So you've set it up in alphabetical order, you've used retrieval dates for articles, and so on. Get on the resource pages for APA or MLA. Google it, look it up, use some tools that you have used in the past, but make sure you have them all listed appropriately. And then in your conclusion, I'm going to look for 2 things. The statement clarifying it's the conclusion, so you're saying in conclusion, or in summary, or so on. And then your vivid ending. So it's something that recaps what you just said. It's something that almost like a reverse attention getter, where you're leaving us with something that is memorable. So it's vivid ending. So these are the pieces I'm going to look at. Now here is a sample outline from a student in one of my classes. This is not exactly perfect, and there's reasons, but it's really, really, really good. It is an A outline. So if you look up here, you've got the title to the speech. That's absolutely vital. You need to have that there. And then you have the introduction. So all 4 pieces are actually here, even though it looks like there's only 3. She is doing a combination of relating the topic to the audience and an attention getter in the same thing. So it's all right here. So you've got all of the 4 pieces that I mentioned earlier. Then you are going to transition, and you're going to bold and kind of put into parentheses the transition between the introduction and the body. So you've got your intro, you've got your transition, you've got the body started, and here's the first main point. Now she has a reading in this speech, and it lasted quite a bit of time, and she kind of went back and forth and read a piece and then explained it and so on. She needed to have put down here that she was doing an explanation. So there's an A, but there needed to be a B here at least, and there honestly should have been a little bit more in this section. So she kind of messed up on that spot. But you can see she's got the source here, you've got sources here, and then she transitions again between the body 1 and the body 2. So main point 1 and main point 2. And then she has the subpoints listed for main point 2 with all of these as sources for that particular section. Then you've transitioned one more time to the last of the main points and all of the subpoints that go with that. Transition the final time to the conclusion, and then you label that conclusion, put what the conclusion is and the pieces that go with it. And if you look here, we have 2 more sources. Now on this particular document, I moved her works cited to the same page so I could fit everything on this big slide here. So I am looking for your works cited to be on a separate page, but in this case I put it on the same page just to get everything all on one slide. But you can see she's got it in APA format, and it's got everything laid out according to the structure that is typical for that format. This was a few years back, so it might look a little different. And anyway, this is the overview of what we're looking for here. There is a sample also on Blackboard. It's the same thing, but it should give you the overview. It's underneath the video tab, so you can see kind of what to do with this particular type of assignment. Now remember, I'm grading outlines on the outline itself as one piece, and then the source quality as another piece. And when we say source quality, I mean that it is a good source found from a credible group. So using opposing viewpoints and so forth. If you go back to the research one, the one where we talked about good research and quality research, you'll see all of that stuff. So make sure they're good sources. Okay? Okay, so this should give you an overview. Now finally, let me recap. You do not have to use this outline to deliver the speech. Now if you choose to go and use something like this to deliver the speech, that is great. That's something that I'm very comfortable with and I would be more than happy to show you how to use. However, if you are more of a note card person, or you want to do something a little bit different because you want to be more creative with the way you use your notes when you deliver the speech, that's fine. Whatever you're comfortable with, do, please. Just make sure that you do not bring up with you a word-for-word written out version of the speech. It is perfectly acceptable for you to write the speech out word for word. I've done that a few times and it helps me to kind of hear it in my head, but then I transmit it into an outline or into note cards. You do not bring up a word-for-word speech in an actual speaking instance. And guess why? Because you'll read it. It's a guarantee. There's no way for you to not read it. And even if you tried to not read it, you'll lose your spot because it's word for word. So it's very difficult for you to follow along. So do not do that. But please feel free to use outlines, note cards, or whatever else you're comfortable with. All right, so hopefully this makes sense and it gives you a good place to start. These can be confusing at first, but hopefully will be pretty simple once you get going. Let me know if you have questions, and as always, you know where to find me.